Welcome to the Salt Strong Fishing Podcast. Salt Strong has been helping saltwater anglers catch more fish in less time for 10 years and is now the largest and most trusted saltwater fishing community in America. If you want to catch more saltwater fish, then keep listening. If you want to speed up your fish catching results even faster, then join the private insider community at saltstrong.com. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Two wolves. Hey everybody, Joe Simons, like diamonds, back again with Unchurched, and read you a little story. One evening, an elder Cherokee Indian told his grandson about a battle that goes on inside of all people. He said, "My son, the battle is between two wolves inside of us at all times. One wolf is fear. It carries anxiety, concern, uncertainty, hesitancy, indecision, and inaction. The other wolf is faith. It brings calm, conviction, confidence, enthusiasm, decisiveness, excitement, and action." The grandson thought about it for a moment and then meekly asked his grandfather, "Grandpa, which wolf wins?" The old Cherokee looked at him and replied, "The one that you feed." Woo! Powerful stuff. I recently came across this. I had read it before in the past, and it hits me hard every time because it is so true. And I've talked, I'm going to say countless times in the past on these episodes about anxiety and fear. And it's so true. I spent a little time thinking about some of my past with anxiety. And guess what I was feeding when I was at my worst? I was feeding the anxiety. I was feeding that wolf within me. And there was a side of me. I mean, you're hearing about it when I go in front of a camera or on podcasts like this that has a lot of confidence, right? That takes action, that gets things done. And when I'm feeding that, I feel like I've got power, I've got momentum. It feels good, right? It brings up more happiness and more fulfillment in life. And when you focus on the fear, which does bring everything that just talked about, right? Indecision and can't be decisive on anything, and just fear and anxiety and ultimately inaction, it's not fun. You don't feel like you're growing. You don't feel like anything's working for you. And it can quickly become a downward spiral, which I've also talked about in the past. So I just wanted to reiterate that because I think that is probably one of the keys to fulfillment and happiness in life. And it doesn't mean every day is going to be perfect or happy or just blissful. But when you're doing things and when you're acting and going through life in some sort of form of confidence and not fear, meaning the opposite of fear, but essentially faith, right? You're just going to be happier. Things are going to get done. You're going to feel better. You're going to attract more awesome things into your life. And when I look back on all of my, I'm going to say, if you're looking at a graph of your life, it's not going to be flat. I don't think I've ever met anyone, probably never will be anyone that's just got a flat life. You're going to have times where there is a lot going on and your stress is out the roof. And that would be, when the graph is, or the line is going down, right? It's dipping down. There's going to be times when you lose people, right? From your grandparents, as you lose probably as a kid, if you're even lucky to have grandparents. Some people never even got to meet theirs, or maybe great grandparents, to parents and aunts and uncles, and maybe even siblings, and maybe even kids, depending on what's happened in your life. Those are going to be just some downward times. I mean, I went through cancer in my late 20s. That was a tough time. Even starting a business, exciting but also tough on financially. There's times when you have massive fights with spouse and maybe even go through divorce. Those are all going to be tough times. There's also times of highs, from having your first child, regardless of what age you do it or how much money you have. That's an exciting time. Like that's really, really just monumental to bring someone in this world. Same with getting, your first house or even a car. I mean, it could be the small stuff, but either way, that line, if you will, of your life is going to be ups and downs. And when I go back and look at all my downs and those low points, especially the low points that kind of stagnated and stayed low for a long time, it was usually always, actually it was always, because I was feeding that wolf of fear and not faith. Really, really powerful when you think about that. So knowing that if you are going through a tough time, or maybe it's someone that you love is going through a tough time, I think we have to remind ourselves and them that, we got to feed that wolf of faith. We might not understand everything going on. We might not ever understand it. You hope that someday God kind of reveals why that happened and you kind of make sense of a bad thing happening or a bad time in your life happening. But at some point, you just have to have faith. As hard as that can be, obviously easier said than done sometimes. Ask me how I know. It's just such a good reminder about life. And it also kind of brings me into, this grass is always greener on the other side, is the mantra that you've probably heard a million times, right? And I feel like many times when we're in those slumps, because this is another way of feeding the wrong thing, instead of focusing on what we have, right? Instead of focusing on what it could be, a lot of times it's way easier to just focus on, well, what if I had this? Or if I only had this, or if I was only married to this person, if we only had more money, if we only had a nicer house, if I only had a better job, all those things that I know I've told myself before in the past, maybe you have as well. But in reality, if we're truly going to go back to this wolf story and focus on faith, right, not the fear of all the stuff that we don't have, that just kind of, it ends up making the whole thing worse. I've never once heard someone, yeah, man, I got so much better about my life when I just started thinking about other people and just kind of being jealous about what other people have. That it really solved everything. No, let's look at what we do have and look for the positive in that. Let's look at the faith side of it, pardon my French there, of what God has given us. And maybe there's a reason God put us on this earth at this absolute perfect specific time and day with all the stuff that I have at my fingertips. Let's look at that, right? And I think when you do that, very similar about which wolf gets stronger, which one wins is the one you feed. The grass is greener where you water, right? I mean, have you ever heard that one? I think that should be the saying. It shouldn't be grass is always greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water, meaning what you give attention to, it's going to look better, right? And let's just use marriage, for instance, because I have a feeling if you've married, you've been through this before. Anytime you have a massive fight, and it's going to happen. I've been married now 16 years. I know some of you listen have been married twice or 3 times as long, maybe, some less. Either way, if it's been a month or if it's been 60 years, you have had fights, maybe even fights that lasted a long time and that you didn't think were going to get past. And somewhere during that fight, and you don't have to answer this because you're not recording the podcast, but I will be brave and bold to admit this. There have been times where I'm like, man, if only I'd married so-and-so or, ex-girlfriend, or if all, maybe this isn't the right person, like, that goes to your head. And that's not something you tell your spouse. And honey, if you're listening to this, I love you. And I obviously am sticking with you for life. But just being honest, like those kind of thoughts, the same thing, the fear versus faith, those things go through our heads if we're really being honest about ourselves. And I'm sure my wife has had the same, like, man, maybe we shouldn't have married this son of a gun. He's going to treat me like this or whatever it was, right? And in reality, the grass is greener where you water. The grass is not greener on the other side, right? Every person has their problems and their own issues and their own skeletons in the closet. It's impossible not to, right? I mean, I've met people who have crazy amounts of money and aren't happy and maybe been divorced 4 or 5 times, right? And we think, man, if I just had their money, everything would be easier. That's not true at all. Everyone has little issues and idiosyncrasies and weird things about them. There is not a perfect person and never will be. Even as much as you love your spouse, you can't say they're perfect. There are things that bother you about them, but the grass is greener where you water it, right? Just like the wolf, whatever you're feeding and whatever you're putting focus on and having faith that, man, this is amazing. And I'm going to look at this with the glass half full mentality. Man, life just gets so much better. And we're dealing with something now with our daughters. We'll share a lot of personal stuff on this one. And thankfully, it hasn't hit like a boiling point yet, but both parents, Lauren and I, are very aware of it and looking at it differently because it's our 2 daughters. And I'm trying to be the best dad I can in this situation. So our oldest daughter, Shauna, is the oldest. She's, I would say, just struggling a whole lot more with meeting people. She's, very introverted, which I'm not. And so it's tough for me to put myself in her shoes where she just doesn't really want to meet people and is having trouble meeting friends. Whereas middle daughter, Savannah, is very extroverted and is, let's just say, in the popular group of girls in her grade, whereas Shauna is not. And Savannah's getting invited to everything. Everyone wants Savannah at their parties, and she's really good. She's now on the travel soccer team. They travel all over the state of Florida, and she's an amazing water skier. And not to say Shauna's not good at any of this stuff. Shauna's probably one of the most creative kids I've ever met in terms of her artwork. And she's got first place in the state fair for some of her art and great at archery, great at everything that she tries, just doesn't try a whole lot of stuff, just how she's kind of wired. And I'm already seeing this. I don't know if it's resentment or jealousy or a combination of both, but even around the dinner table when we're talking and sharing what happened today, and Savannah's got all these kind of cool stories, and Shauna just doesn't have much. Like, yeah, you kind of went to school and studied, and I can even just see how she looks at her sister. And once again, this all goes back to how we're looking at life. And I'm sure maybe Shauna's saying, oh man, if I only had a sister that was just more like me. And Savannah might be thinking the same thing. Oh man, if only I just had a older sister who was more like me and wanted to go out there and kick the soccer ball and do fun stuff and being around a lot of friends. That's just not how they're wired. And they're both made perfect by God. And I understand that as the father, I see that very clearly, and especially through all the things I've gone through and the books I've read, and just my kids, right? They're made absolutely perfect in their own way, in their own unique way, and they're never going to be the same. It'd be boring if everyone was the same, but yet, if you have that, I'll use the fear-based mentality or the grass. It's always greener. If I only had a better sister or someone who could do what I did, or vice versa. If Shauna, man, if I only had the skills, Savannah had, and I'm jealous because of that, at some point we have to take a look at ourselves. We have to take a look at our relationships. We have to take a look at how we think about others that might have more or less than us and start saying, you know what, man, I am so blessed. The grass is greener where I water it. I'm going to water this and I'm going to water myself. And at the end of the day, it all does kind of come back to you, right? Because so much about this is the choices you have to make about how you are going to interpret the things around you, right? So if every time that we run into someone who has way more money than us, or a house that's twice our size, or a job that pays twice the salary, or someone who has an incredible looking spouse that you're jealous of, or whatever it is, there is nothing that you could possibly do to change that. And why would you? They have their own issues to deal with. At some point, we have to go back to that faith part of it, right? Where we're loving ourselves and thrilled to death that we have a life and that we have all the things that we've been blessed with, and start watering our own grass instead of being focused on others, right? It's literally impossible to water your own grass, right? The grass is greener where you water. You can't be watering your grass and be jealous of someone else for something they have, right? And that's what I'm slowly and methodically trying to get across to my daughters and my son as well as he gets older. At 8, they don't really have those symptoms yet of jealousy and thinking about others yet. They haven't really comprehended that. It's odd that why can't we all just be like kids, right? Isn't that funny, right? Kids, they're almost like the most perfect reflection of God. They're not just judgmental. When you got babies, they're not sitting, oh man, I can't believe you got born in that family. They're just happy to be alive. They want to play with each other. They don't look at color or race. It's just babies are just happy. They're happy to be alive. I don't know. I'm going on a tangent here, but it's so impossible to focus on ourselves and to love ourselves and to grow ourselves and grow into who God wanted us to be, right? God made all of us different for a reason and wants us to have that faith, not the fear. It's impossible to do that to ourselves if we're focused on someone else, even for a minute or an hour or a day or a month or however long it is that you've obsessed about something or someone else, or keep buying something or having something that you don't have. And we've all done it. I've done it recently. Just being very honest on this, we've all done that stuff. But I have to keep reminding myself, man, I can't grow as a person. I can't reach the goals that I want. And I have set lofty goals for myself. And I hope you have too. I've got written down goals that I look at every single morning, and I can't hit those if I'm spending any of my time and energy and focus on someone else. And it's really, really hard when you don't have all the stuff that you want. But flip it on its head. What if you saw every person that you knew was poor that was living in the smallest trailer and had a car that wouldn't run, or maybe they don't even have a car, they're on a bike? Like, just think of the poorest person that you've seen in the past week or two. You don't do that to them. You don't just start saying, well, man, I am so blessed. And so, like, it's almost like we beat ourselves up only over people that have more stuff, but we don't ever look at it the other way. I mean, if you look at the stats, and it's mind-boggling how wealthy we are as a country, assuming you're listening to this in America, which most of the viewers are, or listeners are. It's wild how much we have. And it's wild how better off we are than our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents. I mean, think about how much has changed and how much access we have to stuff and how much availability we have and the ability to fly places. I mean, 100 years ago, none of this stuff that we have existed, right? I mean, to be able to go to have central heat and air in your house, or even air conditioning at all, right? And to be able to have a car that you could drive across the country, to be able to get in an airplane and do all the things that we do, and to be able to scan a picture of a check and go right to your bank. I mean, all these things that we do weren't even around 100 years ago. We are so much better off than any of our great-great-grandparents. And compared to the rest of the world, we are a billion times better off, literally. I mean, if you look at it, even the poorest of the poor in America, assuming you have a job and you pay some sort of taxes and have some sort of shelter, we are, and I assume that's you if you're listening to this, we are so much better off than 90-something% of the rest of the world's population. It is really, really, really wild when you look at it that way. So the grass is sometimes way, way, way greener what we got. We just got to look at what we got, and we got to water the heck out of it, just like we do with the wolf. So that is really the big message for today. I'll kind of share one more story that it just hit me as I was talking about this. And when I did that video on anxiety, this was, it's been four plus years now. And that video now has like 650,000 views. It's mind boggling. It's that hour plus long one. And I got a lot of emails about that. There's a ton of comments. And, at the very end, I did say, just like I do on these podcasts, that, hey, if you've got a question or a prayer request or whatever, just hit me up. I can't get back to everyone, but I always try my best. And I always do, for the most part, try to at least get back to the emails. I obviously can't get on the phone with everyone. A lot of people ask for a phone call. I'm like, hey, I'm not a therapist. I'm just sharing what's on my mind. If you're really struggling with this, you need to go get like real help. I am not a psychiatrist. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a doctor. There's some people that have written me about anxiety in particular, and even suicide stuff, that I was like, man, we got to get some help. And I do my best to get them in touch with the right people. But there's this one girl in particular who just kept emailing me, and she's like, I have to talk to you. And there's someone out of the blue. I think she was in Texas or Colorado. I don't even remember. It was somewhere over there. And she's like, I have to talk. I just need 5 minutes. I will not waste your time. I just have to know this one thing. And I was like, okay. So I had a little break in my schedule, and I was like, all right, well, shoot me your number. I'll give you a call. So I called this girl, and she was in her late 20s. Massive anxiety. And it reminded me of what I had, where it was getting to the point where it was every single day, nonstop. It was consuming her life. She was feeding the heck out of the fear. Easy for me to say now when I'm out of that realm, but when I was in it, it was really, really tough not to feed it, because there's just a billion little triggers that keep kind of triggering you back into like, well, what if this happens? And all of a sudden you're in this downward spiral of anxiety, just worst case scenario thoughts. And it's not a fun place to be. And so she is telling me that she's got her best friend's wedding, that she's in the wedding, and it's coming up in a month. And she had some questions about the breathing, and really just wanted me to tell her that if she followed my little thing there, that it would all be perfect in a month. And so I'm now in a tough situation, right? This girl's watched my video. She's begging for a phone call, and she's asking me, will it work in a month? And my answer was, it depends, but probably not. And I don't know if I said the right thing or not. I was honest with her. It all depends on it does depend on your mindset. It just goes back to the wolf story. What are you going to be feeding over the next 30 days? If you're 100% like just ready and you got traction and you got focus and you're like, I am going to defeat this thing in 30 days. I do believe it's possible. From the breathing and part of it is breathing, part of it is the faith, and another part of it is getting out there and facing your fears. That's the third thing. And so she's like, well, what does it depend on? And I was like, well, I told her it was the breathing, like you have to have the faith, you have like, do you know what your purpose is? And she actually had a pretty cool purpose. I'm not going to share, it doesn't really matter. But she's like, well, what's the third thing? I was like, well, the third thing is you got to go face your fear. Like you, over the next 30 days, if you don't leave your apartment, because she said she literally doesn't leave her apartment. She does her little thing at whatever job she had. And then she basically just goes back to her apartment and sits there. She can't date. She can't do anything. She's literally like a recluse because of this anxiety. I was like, if you expect to go to this wedding in the next 30 days and you haven't once tried to face your fear, it's going to be really tough. Like, because there's going to be a few times where you're going to maybe have an anxiety attack out in public and you're going to have to sit there and just let it happen. Because that's what I had to do. I had to go sit there, and a couple times I'm sweating profusely. It was miserable, but guess what happened? Eventually, the sweating stopped, and my heart rate went back down. I didn't die, and all of a sudden, I was back to normal again. I was like, I didn't have to. It's a fight or flight is what happens when you have an anxiety attack or a panic attack. You literally, everything in your body is telling you there's a puma chasing you, and you need to run away as fast as you can and get into a cold, dark shelter where no one can see you or touch you. That's how you feel. That's what your body's literally screaming at you. So I know that feeling. It's not good. It's not fun. But sitting through that and then kind of beating it, all of a sudden you've taken all the power away from that anxiety. Not all of it, most of it. And if you do that a few times, all of a sudden you're like, I got the power. I just got to sit through this. I'm not dying. And everyone got a little bit shorter and shorter. Next thing you know, you're beating it, where you can go up in front of a wedding or whatever it is and not even have to really think about it. And so I told her that, and she basically said, I can't do that. I'm not willing to do that. And I was like, well, I said, I hate to tell you this, but you call me because you wanted my honest opinion. I think you're going to struggle. I said, I've never met anyone who can just do breathing and then all of a sudden have anxiety just go away. At some point, we have to face our fears. And we have to have some faith that we're not going to die, that things are going to get better over time. But at some point, and I would tell my own kids this or anyone I love, you've got to face your fear. And that's how we grow. That's how we grow out of anything. The more we keep running and hiding from it, that is not going to solve anything. So it all goes back to which wolf you're feeding. And I felt bad for her. So I ended up, I put a note to myself in my calendar to text her. After it was the 30 days, I sent a text like, hey, how'd it go? Hoping for a great story, and never wrote me back, which is sad, which probably means it didn't go great, or maybe she didn't show up at all. I guess I'll never know. But I hate that for people, especially when I've been through it. I know what the answer is. And it all goes back to how I started this podcast, is which wolf are you going to feed? So sorry about the story. Hopefully you liked it. I know it extended the podcast a little bit, but it's just so true. Whatever wolf we feed is what we're going to see in our lives. So if you have the option and you have a bad day, a good day, doesn't matter kind of day, always feed the wolf of faith. Always feed the wolf of love and hope and excitement. Don't ever go down the path of the fear. And remember, the grass is greener where you water it. Love you guys. Like always, if you have thoughts, questions, if you like this podcast, share it with someone, which helps me out, gets it out there to more people. And two, hit me up, joe@saltstrong.com, joe@saltstrong.com. As I said, I try to get back to everyone. I can't get on the phone with everyone who wants a phone call. I got a crazy busy life and just unfortunately can't do that. But I would love to help out any way I can. So otherwise, I'll talk to you in the next episode.
Want more fishing tips, shortcuts, and tools so you can catch more fish per trip? Then head over to saltstrong.com now and join the movement. Tight lines, and thanks for listening.